it's Kayla here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a book recommendation video. This one is a little different. I don't think I've ever actually done a book recommendation video. So I think this is my first one, which is kind of cool. So today I'm going to be recommending 5 books that I loved and that I think people should read. And these books are all about the Holocaust or have something to do with the Holocaust, whether they take place during, after, some kind of relation to it. The Holocaust has always been a part of history that has always captured my attention. It was something that I've researched a lot throughout my life, in movies and books and documentaries and stuff like that. It's just one of those things where it's like so hard to believe. It's not hard to believe that it happened. It's hard to believe. It's hard to understand that it even happened. Like it's crazy. And so throughout, my years and reading and stuff, I've come across 5 books in particular that have stayed with me. Some of them are nonfiction, some of them are fiction, and they have had an impact, and they're somehow about the Holocaust. And so I wanted to recommend these today. So these are in no particular order, so we'll just start. The first book is Night by Elie Wiesel. I don't know, I think I've heard many people pronounce his name in many different ways, but I don't know, Elie Wiesel, that name always stuck with me, so, that's what I call him. This is a very famous book. It's called Night. It's a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, which is huge. This, I know Oprah also had this as part of her book club, and I think sometimes this is taught in schools. I'm not entirely sure. And it's like a short book. It is only 115 pages, but it's a true story. And these 115 pages, this little bit is like a punch in the gut. Oh my gosh. I've read this a few times. This is one of those where I had to read a couple times. And I'll just kind of read you the back and give you an idea of what it's about if you've never heard of it. So it says, born in the town of Szeged, Transylvania, Elie Wiesel was a teenager when he and his family were taken from their home in 1944 to the Auschwitz concentration camp and then to Buchenwald. Night is the terrifying record of Elie Wiesel's memories of the death of his family, the death of his own innocence, and his despair as a deeply observant Jew confronting the absolute evil of man. This new translation by his wife and most frequent translator, Marion Wiesel, corrects important details and presents the most accurate rendering in English of Elie Wiesel's testimony to what happened in the camps and of his unforgettable message that this horror must never be allowed to happen again. So, oh my gosh, yeah. Elie Wiesel, he's author of more than 40 internationally acclaimed works of fiction and nonfiction. He's been awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the United States of America Congressional Gold Medal, the French Legion of Honor, and in 1986, the Nobel Peace Prize. He is the Andrew W. Mellon Professor in the Humanities and University Professor at Boston University. This book was originally published, I honestly don't know when it was originally published. 1958. This was originally published in 1958. That's the year my mom was born. Holy cow. And I think it was originally written in French, if I'm not mistaken. Translated from the French by Marion Wiesel. Maybe it was written in French originally. Oh my gosh, this book holds a special place in my heart. It's incredible. This book is so incredible because he does what is really hard, I think, for a lot of writers to do, which is to say what you want to say in as limited amount of words as possible, but at the same time those words have an insane impact on you. Like, this book is so thin, so short, but the words, they kill you. I mean, and sometimes it's not even just the words, it's just what happened. Like, the things that he has seen and things that he's been through are unspeakable. They're things that you can't even dream of, like in your wildest nightmares. Like, you cannot come up with something evil enough than the things that he has seen. He's lived through this stuff, and it's insane. And I think the first time I read this, I think I was in high school. So, and then I read it again in my early 20s, and bits and pieces, you know, throughout my life, basically. And one thing that really stands out to me, and that I kind of, I caught on like really quickly, was his voice. Like, to me, when I read this, there's such anger, and I don't want to say, like, because it sounds bad, like saying like anger and bitterness and hatred, but I can feel those things coming from him. Like, the way he describes things, like, there's just this anger, there's this fury, you know, that this happened, that his family was killed, was murdered in awful ways. I mean, that's one thing I've always kind of taken away from Elie Wiesel. And a lot of times, like, I've looked up speeches that he's done and all this, and I always get that feeling that more than sadness, more than anything, I get this anger, you know, that this just simmering anger at what happened. And one thing I've learned, you know, reading a bunch of different books by different authors about this topic, is that they're all so different. They all feel very differently, and it's kind of interesting to see that come through. Like, in no way am I saying this in a bad way. Like, when you're reading it, you're just as pissed. You are so pissed off. Like, you can feel it inside, and so, that's not pleasant. Like, I hate being mad. I hate being mad about anything, and this book makes me so mad, and that's why it's really hard to read. In terms of that, it's hard to get through, because the truth really hurts when it comes to this, and all of his anger and his, you know, resentment and fury at the Nazis is totally justified, you know? And through that, he has made such a difference in the world. Like, he has, like I said, written all of these books. He has spoken all across the world, and his one mission in life was so that no one forgets this. He wanted to make sure that nobody forgets this, ever. It can't be forgotten, because if it's forgotten, it'll happen again, and it cannot happen again. And he's kind of made that his life mission. So, if you've never read this, I do think everyone should read it. It's easy enough for anyone to read it. It's hard though, but I think that if you don't know too much about the Holocaust, this will give you a real good idea of what it was like, and that it shouldn't happen again. So, I highly recommend this. I give this 5 out of 5 stars, 10 out of 5 stars, you know, 1,000,000 stars. It's so good, and it totally deserved the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, whew. And this is actually a trilogy. There's Night, there's Dawn, and there's Dusk, I think. So 3 parts to this one specific, like, trilogy. I have never read the other ones, which I need to, but Night is the most famous of those. So I highly recommend it. Okay, so next on my list is Sophie's Choice by William Styron. This is a pretty big book. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. This is also a movie, Sophie's Choice. It was made in the 80s, I want to say, and Meryl Streep stars as Sophie. Yeah, so this movie was made in 1982, and this book was written or published in 1959? No, that can't be right. 1976? 1976, I think, by William Styron. Now, this book is very popular and well known too, especially because of the movie. I first heard of this book, I'm not sure how I heard of this book. I think I was definitely in high school, and I think I overheard a conversation between my parents and my sisters or something, and they talked about Sophie's choice and this choice that she had to make, and it was a choice that no one can make, but she was forced to make it. And I'm like instantly was like, what? Like, what are they talking about? And so when I did the research and stuff, I was instantly like, this is something I have to read. So I'll read you the back of it so you know what it's about. And this is fiction. This is not a true story. Fiction. Alright, so it says, William Styron's most complex and ambitious novel begins with a young Southerner journeying north in 1947 to become a writer. It leads us into Stingo's infatuated yet uneasy involvement with his neighbors, the demonically brilliant Jew, Nathan, and his Polish lover, Sophie, a beautiful woman with a number tattooed on her arm and an unbearable secret in her past. And finally, Sophie's choice leads to an unblinking confrontation with what can only be called pure evil. Oh my gosh, so, oh my god, this book. I originally was interested in it because of the choice. And oh my gosh, it's so crazy, this book. So largely it's about the protagonist is this guy named Stingo, and I think he just moved to New York, and he's in this apartment building, and some of his neighbors, I believe they're his like downstairs neighbors, Sophie and Nathan, they're like a couple. And he kind of has this relationship, this friendship with them throughout the book. And they're very, you see right away that Nathan and Sophie's relationship is very volatile and very passionate and very all over the place. And Stingo is largely, I don't want to say obsessed with Sophie, but he has a huge crush on her. She's gorgeous. She's this beautiful woman, and she's taken, and you know, she's sweet, and he wants to be near her all the time. And so he befriends her and Nathan and stuff, and you kind of see this process of him living in New York, spending time with these people, learning about them, trying to be a writer, all that stuff. So, but throughout the book, there are flashbacks. There are flashbacks to when Sophie is in the Holocaust, and when I think she arrives at Auschwitz, and her time there and stuff like that. So, and I think at one point she's telling Stingo parts of her story. Then you get to the choice. And if you don't want to know what the choice is, it's not really a spoiler. It's not really a spoiler, but she has to choose. A Nazi makes her choose which one of her children to save. So when she arrives at Auschwitz, this Nazi, she has a little boy and a little girl, and she's all alone. It's just her and her little boy and little girl. And this Nazi says, you have to choose. And she's like, I can't choose. And he makes her choose. He makes her choose. One of her children will go immediately to the crematorium, and one will live. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Whew, I cried. Oh my gosh, like, it is the craziest thing ever. And this was actually kind of inspired by a true story. There was something like this that did happen during the Holocaust, where someone had to choose between two family members. I think it was like an aunt and a cousin or something like that. So there was this like choice, this awful choice that they made them choose. And that's what I think inspired this. And this actually had there were a lot of people that were not really happy with William Styron writing about this, because he himself was not in the Holocaust. I don't think he knew, I don't think his family was in the Holocaust, but this was a topic that was very, very important to him, and he wanted to write about it, and so he wrote this really crazy story. It has a crazy ending, there's twists. I mean, it's really good. It's a big book. I remember reading this on my way to Arkansas. We were driving to Arkansas to climb a mountain, and I was reading this, and I think 562 pages, I think. Yeah, I highly recommend this book. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. It's really good. It's interesting because this takes place after the Holocaust. Yes, there are snippets during and stuff like that, but a lot of it is the aftermath. You kind of see what the Holocaust has done to this woman, and there's mystery surrounding her, and so it's real interesting to see like what life is like in America shortly after the Holocaust happened, and so that's kind of fascinating. So I highly recommend this. It's really good. It will tear your heart apart, and I recommend the movie too. I watched the movie after I read the book, and the movie was really good. I mean, Meryl Streep's amazing. Like, Meryl Streep, oh my god. So definitely read it. Alright, the next book is one I don't own, unfortunately. It's called In the Mouth of the Wolf by Rose Czar. This book is, I don't even know. I had to read this. This was actually assigned in my high school when I was a freshman. This was assigned in my freshman English class. And I'm not sure, you know, I had never heard of this book, but this is nonfiction. It's a true story. I'll read you what it's about. So this is the little blurb on Goodreads. It says, Rose Czar was 19 years old when the Nazis invaded her native Poland. Her father urged her to save herself by hiding in the mouth of the wolf, or within the enemy itself. She managed to obtain false papers, secretly changing her identity and surviving the Holocaust as maid and nanny for a Nazi SS colonel. So this book was so good. It's a true story, and it's different because this book follows a woman who lived through the Holocaust, but the entire time she lived in hiding. So this is different, you know, she never went to a concentration camp. So this is like, there's so many different parts of the Holocaust that were awful, and this shows a different side of it, you know. Night shows what it's like to be in a concentration camp. Sophie's Choice shows what it's like, you know, afterwards and during. And then this is during, but someone who is hiding in plain sight. Like, this is different. This isn't like Anne Frank, you know, where she's hiding in a building away from people. She's hiding in plain sight. So I guess like the way she looks, like she can pass for blonde hair, blue-eyed kind of thing. I think she has to dye her hair, but so she passes as a non-Jew. I want to say she's Jewish. I mean, she's Polish, but she knew that if they had caught her, she would have gone to a concentration camp. So this book follows her through the years and her surviving and her close calls and the things that she had to do. I mean, she had to create an entire identity, a new person, a new identity. You know, she couldn't be herself for years. Like, you know how weird that is. Like, her appearance, her mannerisms, her opinions, her life, every way that she lived had to be carefully thought out, and it was fake. It was acting, and she had to do this to survive. And it is an insane story. I mean, and she's 19 and she's all alone doing this, you know, in the midst of when things are going crazy, when you know, people are being taken from their homes and deported and stuff. Like, she's right there, and that's why it's called In the Mouth of the Wolf. Like, that's one of the safest places you could hide, is right there, because they won't think to look for you there. You know, why would you go towards the enemy? You would run away normally. She is living with a colonel an SS officer, like a Nazi, and it saves her life, you know. And it's such a good book, though. I highly recommend it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I need to read it again. I only read it when I was a freshman in high school, and that was 10 years ago. You know, it was like 14 years ago. but it's really good. So I definitely highly recommend that. Mouth of the Wolf by Rose Czar. The next one I want to do is this book. It's called The Commandant's Girl by Pam Jenoff. This book is fiction. This is something I picked up at the library. I was just browsing. I want to say, I don't even think I was in the Holocaust section. I was just in fiction, and the cover actually kind of, you know, brought me in, and then when I read what it was about, I was like, oh my god, I have to read this. So I'll read you what it says on GOODREADS. I don't have that one either. Like I said, it was a library book. So this says, okay, 19-year-old Emma Bau has been married only 3 weeks when Nazi tanks thunder into her native Poland. Within days, Emma's husband Jacob is forced to disappear underground, leaving her imprisoned within the city's decrepit, moldering Jewish ghetto. But then, in the dead of night, the resistance smuggles her out, taken to Krakow to live with Jacob's Catholic aunt, Kryzia. Emma takes on a new identity as Anna Lepowski, a Gentile. Emma's already precarious situation is complicated by her introduction to Kommandant Rickwalder, a high-ranking Nazi official who hires her to work as his assistant. Urged by the resistance to use her position to access details of the Nazi occupation, Emma must compromise her safety and her marriage vows in order to help Jacob's cause. As the atrocities of war intensify, so does Emma's relationship with the Commandant, building to a climax that will risk not only her double life, but also the lives of those she loves. So this book is crazy. This is fiction, and it's kind of like In the Mouth of the Wolf, where it's this girl who she has a new identity and she's hiding in plain sight. But it's a little different because she's also kind of working for the resistance, the people. There was an underground presence during the Holocaust that were constantly fighting the Holocaust, fighting the Nazis in any way that they could, saving lives. It was very much like the Underground Railroad in the U.S. It kind of gave me those kind of vibes where there's people who are working to save lives. And one of them was giving people new identities. And this Commandant, he kind of, this girl, she catches his eye, and when the resistance people, they want her to use that to her advantage to get information and stuff. So she's precariously juggling, trying to survive, trying to get information from this Commandant, but not too much, but also trying to be faithful to her husband, but also trying to get more information to help the cause. I mean, it's just insane. The story is crazy. It's tension filled. It has a crazy ending, and it made me cry. It was really good. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars because it was really good, and I highly recommend it too. And so yeah, it's fiction, and I will say that there is some kind of relationship. It's complicated, and that's what's really interesting, because I love that people are so complicated, and it really complicates the way you think because of this Commandant, this Nazi, and you see human sides of him and good sides of him, and so your brain starts getting really confused. But it just shows that people are people, and people have good and bad in them, some more than others, and it's just really good. So I highly recommend that one too. And the last one I have to recommend is the one that is probably most dear to my heart, and it is The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. Now, this is the most famous book about the Holocaust. This is taught in schools everywhere. I think almost everybody in the US has read this for school. I didn't, for some reason. My class never assigned this. I read this on my own, but this is such a good book. And a lot of times, I mean, it's good that it's assigned, but a lot of times when books are assigned, some kids don't like to read, and so they really don't get what this is about. And so I think it's important, but I do think everyone should read it, and this was really interesting. So I'll read you the back in case you're not entirely sure what it's about. So it says, this is a true story. This is all true. Discovered in the attic in which she spent the last years of her life, Anne Frank's remarkable diary has since become a world classic, a powerful reminder of the horrors of war and an eloquent testament to the human spirit. In 1942, with Nazis occupying Holland, a 13-year-old Jewish girl and her family fled their home in Amsterdam and went into hiding. For the next 2 years, until their whereabouts were betrayed to the Gestapo, they and another family lived cloistered in the secret annex of an old office building. Cut off from the outside world, they faced hunger, boredom, the constant cruelties of living in confined quarters, and the ever-present threat of discovery and death. In her diary, Anne Frank recorded vivid impressions of her experiences during this period. By turns thoughtful, moving, and amusing, her account offers a fascinating commentary on human courage and frailty, and a compelling self-portrait of a sensitive and spirited young woman whose promise was tragically cut short. So, this book is so sad. And it's it's a diary. It's literally her diary. And it's mostly her and another family are living in this attic. I think it's like the top 2 floors of this building. And they're there for 2 years. And she documents her entire time there. And she's 13 when they first go into hiding. And then she's 15 when they were discovered. And so I started reading this when I was a teenager. I think I was like 16. I think I was like 16 years old. And I read like half of it. And I didn't finish it because it was a library book. I had to return it and I never checked it out again. It wasn't because it was bad or anything. So I read it when I was 16. But then when I was like 23, 24, I wanted to finish it. So I decided to start from the beginning and read it again. And it was fascinating. Like, I had such a visceral reaction to this book. It was insane because when I first read half of it, I first read a lot of this, I was a teenager too. Like, I wasn't that much older than her. So, I was looking at her experiences through teenage eyes, and a lot of her experiences are so normal teenager things, crushes, getting your period, curiosity about the world and what you want and dreams and stuff like that, and all amid this horror that's going around. They have to be quiet, and it's the most insane thing that you would have to go through. It's crazy. So I remember when I was a teenager reading it and feeling one way about it, and then I didn't expect this, but when I read it when I was like 23, 24, and I had such a different experience with it. All of a sudden, I was looking at it less as a, what do you call it? Not an equal, but like a peer, because I'm an adult now. I'm 23 years old, 24, and I'm reading this 13-year-old's diary, and to see it from an adult's perspective, the things that she went through and going through a lot of the things she went through, as a teenager, we all go through it, and it really affected me. Like, it was so weird. I've never felt this with another book, but like I actually felt so close to her. It's so weird, but I've never read another book where it's someone's actual diary, so maybe that's what it is. But like, you're in her head, you're with her and through everything, and just knowing that she's a real person and that this really happened, it really affected me. Like, towards the end, like I could cry now just thinking about it, but towards the end when things get bad, I don't know, I started feeling like, I don't know, I just felt like this loss. Like, it was weird because she's not just a character in a book, she's a real person, and to be in her head, I felt like I was her friend. Like, I really felt like I knew her on this super intimate level. Like, if I met her in person today, like, I feel like I know her. And it was the craziest feeling. And after the ending, it's not a happy ending, and it broke my heart. Like, for a while afterward, I cried so hard when it ended, and it really stayed with me for a long time. Weeks. I just couldn't get out of my head, and I was really sad. Like, I actually felt like I lost somebody. and she's just a big part. She became such a big part of my heart, which is so weird because it's like, you know, I've never met her. This happened so long ago, but I don't know, I just felt this really strong connection to her, and I started looking at her through a more like a big sister like eyes, instead of back in the day when I was a teenager too, looking at her through like a teenager, but then as an adult looking back, you know, at teenage years. It made me feel very sentimental towards her and very like she would it felt like she was like my little sister or something. And so I don't know if that sounds so weird, but it was crazy. And so I think this is one of the books that has affected me the most in my life. It really hurts. Like, it's weird because like I actually still feel this pain when I think about her, because I'm so upset that she didn't survive. You know, I'm upset because I know her hopes and dreams, and I know the things that she wanted and the things she was looking forward to and who she was as a person, and just knowing like I could see it, like I could see her life, I could see what it would have turned into, the beautiful things she would have done, the things she would have discovered, and she didn't get to discover it, and it pissed me off, and it made me so sad, and like it still makes me really sad. Oh, so I mean, everyone has read this book, it seems like, but if you haven't, I really think you should. It gives you another lens to look at the Holocaust through, and it really changed. I don't want to say it changed my life, but it definitely affected me, and it stayed with me, and it's still like it's a treasure. You know, I will reread it again and again, and it makes me wonder, like, I felt a certain way when I was a teenager, and then I felt a certain way when I'm in my 20s. How am I going to feel about it when I'm in my 30s or my 40s or my 50s, you know? I'll have all these life experiences, and it's amazing how that can totally change your perspective of something. So yeah, this is probably the one that out of all these books that has affected me the most. But again, I mean, this is the Holocaust, and it's one of those things where like I try and soak up anything I can get my hands on, books, movies, documentaries, anything, because it's one of those things that it's so hard for me to grasp. It's so hard for my brain to wrap around what happened, and I keep trying to make sense of it, because I feel like that's a human thing. Like we make sense of the world around us, you know, and so when there's something that doesn't make sense, we want to learn more about it until it makes sense. And so I feel like that's a big reason why I'm still so engrossed in this time in history, is because I keep wanting to understand it, and I know logically that I never will, you know, because it's not logical. It's not something that you can understand. So, but it's something that clearly I'm going to read about forever. But yeah, so of course I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, like 15 out of 5 stars. 100 stars. It's so good. So yeah, those are my 5 books that have to do with the Holocaust, and I highly recommend them all. I have read other ones, and I'm going to read a lot more, you know, so maybe there'll be an updated list in the future, you know, but I hope you liked these, and if you did, you know, if you've read these, tell me what you thought about them, how you felt about them, any other books that really affected you that were about the Holocaust or about a time in history or something that really touched you, you know. I'm always so interested in stuff like that. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, you know, like, subscribe, and all that stuff. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye. What am I doing with my life and my choices? I don't know. The lighting is weird. I apologize. Come on, GOODREADS, get your life together. Do you want to, like, how should I do it? This way? I mean, it's, sorry.